Hello and welcome. We are a couple of days away from Christmas, or at least we are here in New Zealand a couple of days away from Christmas, and I thought I would pop in for a little bit of a live stream and just also to share something, share an answer with you of one of the questions that I get asked very frequently, and that is, how do I create my multi-track recordings? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get some things working. I've been having some technical issues trying to get everything running and trying to get it working the way that it should work. So I've had to do some sort of really janky setup to try and get things working. So just bear with me a moment. I'm going to try and get the YouTube live chat thing up on the screen. Oh gosh, why do I have to sign in again? Does anyone know what my password is? Christopher Bill Forever 123. I think that's. Oh, now it's going to want two-step verification. So it's going to email me. Yes, that's me. Sign in approved. Right. I'm just going to, can those people who are, I can see on the chat that I've got open on my monitor, can you hear me adequately? Is there any issues with that? XSplit wants to access my Google account. Far out. Oh, is it about to start working? There we go. Now I just move that across to there. It's quite difficult to be as incompetent as I am when it comes to technical stuff. Oh, now how do I make that bigger? Because that's quite small now, isn't it? Chat box, text size. Oh, I can make the text bigger. That's good because I'm old and very, very blind. Righty ho. Right, so the idea with this live stream is that I would share with you a little bit about how I create my multi-track recordings. What I have for music in front of me is the new sets of carol books that have been released from the Salvation Army. So they've, way back when they had the green carol book, then they had the red carol book, and now they've got the Christmas collection, the new red carol book. I've got a couple of problems with the new red carol book. Number one, it shouldn't be red so that it's the same colour as the old one, but also the paper is white. Here in New Zealand, Christmas is in the middle of summer. It's incredibly warm, it's very bright outside, and if you've got white paper and you're standing outside playing Christmas carols, this is like having a collapsed sun radiate into your face. It is incredibly bright and not very comfortable. I'm also told that if water gets on this paper, it starts to disintegrate, so it's apparently not the best set of creations ever, but it's just been released this year. There are a number of carols in here, so I thought what I could do today was let my viewers, you guys, choose a carol that you would like me to use as my demonstration of my multi-track. I will then record it. I've got a number of instruments arrayed out next to me and show you how I go through that process. So I guess the question is, what reasonably common, well-known Christmas carol would you like me to play? I've got the rest just on my stand, so just give me a second. One day I'm going to have a nice large area to record my videos in, and not this sort of pokey about 2 or 3 metre square space. It might look like I've got a lot of room here, but man am I cramped. I've got things everywhere. So let me see. Tannenbaum, is that known as something else? Because I'm not familiar with the name. Is that Oh Christmas Tree? What else have we got? Jingle Bells. Coventry. Oh, Coventry Carol. That's nice. There's actually, with the old set of Salvation Army carols books, you just had numbers 1 through to 100 and something or other. This one has actually got some arrangements of music at the back. So it's got Coventry Carol as a separate arrangement, as well as a jazzy version of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. It's got a couple of marches and Christmas arrangements. I've actually been spending the last couple of days putting together a version of this particular march, Christmas Joy, which is something that we play all the time. Anyway, my second monitor has now gone crazy. Why is it doing that? I don't know. It takes a lot of effort for as many things to go wrong and be difficult as you will see in one of my live streams. So what have we got? Sleigh Ride, I don't know that one. We've got Silent Night, Deck the Halls. Deck the Halls is a nice slow one, although I did a multi-track of that last year, so maybe not that one. Hark the Herald is pretty straight. Rocking Around the Christmas Tree. It wasn't in the last one that I can remember. I'll see if it's in this one. It's under R, and it's number 129, so go to 129. 4 verses. That's a bit long. I think that's going to be a little bit long. Silent Night, that's very slow and dull. Let me just see how long Coventry Carol is in here. Just the standard arrangement of it as opposed to the special one at the back. 25. Ding dong merrily on high. Alright, so Coventry Carol, is there any other ones that people would like as a suggestion? Hot Cross Buns on Sopranino. No. Gasp, I don't know Sleigh Ride. Are there any other suggestions of ones that people would like me today? Carol of the Bells. Carol of the Bells is all right. Green Sleeves. I'll do Green Sleeves. That one is number 90 in the old book. What's it in this one? Green Sleeves. Green. It's not in here. What? Green Sleeves. Okay, I can't do Green Sleeves. Green Sleeves isn't in here. Alright, I'll do Joy to the World. Where are we? Joy to the World is number 49. Joy to the World is the one that I shall use. So, we have a 5-part... These carols are put into 5-part arrangements, and the instruments that you can play, that you can choose to use for those 5 parts is reasonably flexible. What I have in front of me is I have a cornet, a baritone, a euphonium, and a tuba. So I'm going to play the first and second parts on the cornet, play the third part on the baritone, the fourth part on the bass, and the euphonium is the 5th part. It's sort of like an extra ancillary optional one that, because I've got a euphonium, won't be optional. Alright, so what I'll do is flick it over to my next scene. And so this is Audacity. This is the program that I use to do my multi-tracks. And so the very first thing that I want to do is generate a rhythm track. This is the tempo that I'm going to be going along and using. And this sort of ensures that when I record the tracks that I can get them more or less in time. So it says Joy to the World is, according to the music, it's supposed to be andante at 76 beats a minute. But I don't think I've ever seen anyone play it that slowly. So I just want to see what 104 sounds like and see whether that is going to be too fast or slow. Oh, well, I need to turn the volume up on my mixing board. Dun, 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 dun. Alright, that's still a little bit slow, so let me make something a little bit faster. Alright. For some reason, oh gosh, there's a really stupid thing with XSplit, the things that I use, that it keeps changing the switching between scenes, and I can't disable it, even though I've disabled the hotkey. I don't know why I can't seem to disable switching between scenes when I press digits, but nevertheless. Anyway, so what I've got here is the rhythm track, and I've got a mixing board up here next to my face. I'll just move this around so you can see it. There is my mixing board. That's got a bunch of inputs and things like that. So I've got my voice microphone is put in that. I've got channel 2, which is my other microphone. That's sitting right here, just sort of projecting out at me. It's on a big arm, so I can adjust where it points for the various instruments that I've got. For the purpose of doing this video, I have got my computer sounds routing through the mixing board so that you can hear what's on my computer. I couldn't find a more elegant way of doing that. The problem with doing it this particular way is that it means when I go and record a track, each track is going to be a cumulative effect. So if I record part 1, you're going to hear part 1 and the click track. If I record, say, a second part, you're going to hear have a new track created that's got those extra bits. So instead of each track being its own separate instrument, you're going to have each track sort of piling on top of each other. That's not normally how I do it, but because of the complexities of doing it this way, that's what we're going to have today. So what I have in front of me is my cornet. I need to move things around slightly so the microphone isn't sticking up my nose. Let's put that down. Check volumes. Alright, so let's record the melody. So I'll give myself a couple of bars in for nothing, and if I make any mistakes, I'll go back to the start. Alright, so that's part 1. It's recorded a little bit quietly by the looks of things. But it's audible, so that's going to be fine. Right, let me just grab the second part. So that's the first part. Part 2, where's that? Euphonium, baritone, cornet, and that's number 49. So I'll grab the second cornet book. And we will record over the top. Now, because of what I said where each track is going to be cumulative, the next track that I record is going to be the click track, the first cornet, and the second all in one track. Normally I'd prefer them to be separate, but because of how I've got the audio routing through my mixing board and everything, it's not going to be like that this time. So, without any more ados, let me do the second part. Okay, so let's see what the balance is like on that. Let's mute. Alright, so I'm going to have to go back and do that again because it's just too quiet. Alright, so let's turn up the click track volume for 1. That should be a bit better. Let's go back to the first corner part and I'll record that. The other downside of doing it this particular way is that I'm not actually going to be able to get rid of that click now that it's part of the recording. But let me just check the balance here before I go on. Alright, so we can get rid of that click track now that we've got it there. And let's try the second part. Alright, let's just check the balance. Alright, so the second corner part was too loud. So I'll do that again. There's a fair bit of trial and error when it comes to some of this stuff. Okay, so that is going all right. So what I'll do now is grab the third part, which is the baritone part, and play that on my baritone. Number 49. And so because I'm playing it on a baritone and the baritone sticks up in the air, I'm going to have to change where my microphone goes. So let's just sort of fabric cobble something together and put that up in the air. We can sort of do that. Oh, there's a lot of slack in that. I'm going to have to tighten that at some point in my life. All right. And so as I do that, that becomes my sort of master one. And we're going to accumulate more parts. Now I'm getting a little bit of feedback audio stuff, so I hope that you guys aren't getting that too. Now it's a bit out of tune, so I go through that a few times and things like that, but because I'm just sort of mucking around here, I'm not going to worry too much about the tuning. Right, 49 UFO part, I can put that down there. Right, go back to Audacity, and we can get rid of that. Actually, that tuning isn't very good, so I might do that again. Flatten things slightly. See how we go. Right, as I said, that tuning is atrocious, but I've now got a new problem in my life, and that is that one of my monitors has started to die. So let's just, this is my second monitor, and it's doing all sorts of funky things. So I'm now going to have to see if I can fix that. Pointing back at me. Right, why would that have happened? Let's change the screen refresh rate and see if that makes a difference. Okay, I've now got that back, but oh gosh, the colour. Now it looks like that. Alright, so that monitor's on its way up. That's not the end of the world. I can replace that one day. Okay, so we've got our sound. It's again not very tuneful, not very good, but you know, for the purposes of demonstrating how I put together a multi-track, generally it'll do. So now we've got the UFO part. The UFO part is mostly, in this particular instance, just a repetition of the melody and all the tuba part. So I'll record that nonetheless. Oh gosh, why does everything I do in my life go wrong? My sponge is starting to fall out. Right, so that's the UFO part taken care of. Let me just try and put this down without breaking anything. There we go. Right, now the tuba part. So my tuba that I've got with me is in E flat, and it's a very old tuba, and it's actually small bore. So it's gonna. So I haven't got a mouthpiece that fits in it because the mouthpieces of the period were very small, relatively speaking. So whilst I do have a mouthpiece that fits it, it is so small I find it very difficult to pitch notes on. So I've got a 3D printed mouthpiece which fits, works adequately, but it rattles slightly and it makes the tone sound pants. So what I'm going to do is do it nonetheless. So let me just sort of grunt and groan as I try and pick this up without knocking over too much. Oh gosh. Oh, I'm too old for this rubbish. Oh dear. All right, so this is my E flat bass. Alright, and let's see what that sounds like. Alright, so that's not too bad. Sometimes I might go through that and add some additional parts, things like that. But, I mean, what we have now... let me just try and put... Should I put this down or am I going to make my life worse if I do that? I might try and put it down over there. If that falls over, I might cry. Alright, so what we have now is a short recording. I mean, it's only 20 seconds long because that's how long a single verse of Joy to the World is. But what we have is it completed. It's in 4 or 5 parts. And so I'm going to play this and just show you what it might be like if I've followed this process. As I said, click's not normally there. I don't have the audio routed the same way that I have now, but for giving you an example of how this would work, it's good enough. So that's an example of something that I've just scraped together. Let's just go back and see if there's any questions like that. I could put in a French horn part, but I don't have the music for a French horn, unfortunately. But what I'm going to do is show you one of these that I've done recently and show you what it actually looks like. My monitor is now flicking on and off, so oh gosh, I think that needs to be replaced. It cost me $15, would you believe? So Chris, one thing that I'm going to be releasing shortly, and I've been spending the last little while doing the recording, editing the audio and creating the video for it, etc. Is that much. And if you were here earlier, I showed you, it's called Christmas Joy. It's a medley of Christmassy sort of pieces. And so what I'm going to do is show you where I'm at with that one. I need to still do a little bit of refining on the audio, and I still need to do a little bit of work on the video. The content that I produce, I'm not necessarily aiming for perfection because I don't really have the skills as a musician and as a computer bungler person, editor, whatnot, to achieve perfection. But what I do aim for is good enough, or near enough is good enough. Actually, here's another one that just while I'm transferring it across, I'll show you this. yes, here we go. When Santa got stuck up the chimney. This is, we can see sometimes I label the parts. This is the tuba part, for instance. Let's turn the sound on. So that's the tuba part, and so we've recorded each of the tracks individually, which is my normal process, which I can't replicate now because of how, as I said, the audio is routed through this mixing box. But what we have, just as a raw example, I'll just mute the click track, is this. So that's, that is just the raw stuff. I haven't done any editing to this whatsoever. And so as a consequence of the fact that I haven't edited it, we're going to have some parts which I record the song, as I have done, and then I've just kept going recording bits that I know I've mucked up. And so that's this tune. Not very exciting in that particular case, but I've obviously mucked that up when I was recording it, and so what I'll later do is I'll sit with this just on my PC or laptop, and I will go through and try and get the audio so it is good enough. So some of that wasn't very good, so I So obviously I haven't played some of that parts very well. So that obviously was the last iteration. So when I'd be going to edit this all together, I'd copy that bit, place it in where it's supposed to be, and the resulting thing would be, sound a little bit better. So one that I've done a little bit more work on is not that one, this one here. So this is, this is Christmas Joy. This is the march. This is the march that I was mentioning about. That was the medley thing. And so I've got the different parts, and I've mixed it all here. So we'll mute that final mix. So with this Christmas Joy, the cornet parts, you've got the first cornet part is split into 2 or 3, and then the second cornet part's there. So what I've got for various parts is that I've got my first time through the first cornet part, my second time through the first cornet part, then recording the lower part, just the notes that are different, and then there'll be the second cornet part somewhere else, up here. And so we mix that all through together and we get, the end result. And so that's the example of this one, Christmas Joy. And so that's effectively how I will go about creating my multi-track audios, my multi-track recordings and things like that. As far as how I do the video stuff, I use Adobe Premiere. So I've got a camera that sits up here. It's the world's cheapest camera. I bought it off eBay for next to nothing, and because it came from the US, it's got a 230 to 115 and all sorts of voltage regulators or transformers so that it can actually function and things like that. So I'll import that video and put it into Adobe Premiere and get that all split screened up like that. I don't have Adobe Premiere in the computer that I use in my garage here. Otherwise I'll demonstrate what that was like. So you're just going to have to imagine that, but maybe I'll create do another live stream from a different computer that actually has that. So are there any questions or things? I'm just going to get rid of the second monitor because it's pants. Are there any questions or things like that that anyone has about that specific product, about that specific process that I can answer while I'm here? I'll take the headphones off because I don't need to listen to my own voice. Right, I don't actually know whether this thing is actually working. Let me use the questions that are coming in from the live chat. Is it wrong to call me a Kiwi? No, it isn't. I am a Kiwi. I am from New Zealand. Adobe Premiere, not Dolby Premiere, Adobe. Hey Trent, are you doing all right? You seem kind of stressed. Oh, that message came in a while back. Yeah, I'm doing adequately. It's Christmas time. I'm finished all my caroling for the year, but I've had about 15 or so different caroling events. And some of them were several hours long, so I'm a bit knackered after all of that. But yeah, it's not too bad. So if there are no real questions about that, is there any questions? What are some of the editing features like? All right, so if I go through back to Christmas Joy and I look at this, some of the things that I will do frequently, so for instance, if this note is out of tune, then what I might do is go change pitch, and I might change the pitch usually by 1/10 of a semitone, either down for minus or up for positive, so 0.5% change in the frequency of the note, and I do that until the note sounds a little bit better. I will frequently amplify either up or down the pitch, the volume, so that I can ensure that things that need to be heard are actually heard, and I do some stuff like that. Change speed I never use, change tempo, things like that. I find with the sort of recordings that I do, things like the noise reduction and click removal things, they don't work very well. I find that they don't work very well. So there are sometimes if you try and like delete a bit of a note in the middle, you'll get a little click. And so there are various idiosyncrasies of using Audacity that you have to deal with. The only things that I use here is the crossfade. If I need to shorten something, I find that crossfade is much better than just doing it by deleting something. I used to use some reverb to just apply to the final mix once I've mixed everything down to a single track. I don't do that now because my mixing board up here has a built-in effects thing which sounds a whole lot better. I don't use anything other than fade in, fade out, just if I'm having to do some really micro adjusting to things, as well as the change pitch. So if I'm wanting to cut off a note or delete a little bit, I'll go right in. I will say if I wanted to make this note shorter, I would do effect fade out there, and that would fade this note out to silence. I'd then generate silence here, which will silence that bit, and then we've got my note that's shorter. If I needed to, so there are a few things like that I sometimes do reasonably frequently, but of course most of it is just lining it up. If the tuning is too horrific for a specific note, then I usually just cut that note out, because if you adjust the tuning too much, then you get the timbre of the sound gets really distorted and it sounds quite awful. So it's something you just need to be a little bit, careful about. Once I'm ready for it to be done into a final mix, I'll select everything and then I'll mix it down to new track. And what that will do is give me, for instance, what I have down the bottom, which is a single track that's got everything in it. I will make sure there's no peaks and no clipping. And then once that I've got that finalized and I'm happy with how it sounds, I will then export the selected audio as a WAV file and send that off through to my media server, and then I'll grab that file from whatever PC I'm using to do the Adobe Premiere stuff, put the video with it, and then go like that. So that's generally my basic process. It can be a bit of a faff to go through everything, as you imagine. A lot of the multi-tracks that I do, I don't actually bother necessarily publishing them all, because I find that I spend so much time editing it that the recording of the music is such a short part of it. But the editing of it, making sure everything lined up, is so much more difficult and so much more time consuming. So the recording of the audio for Christmas Joy, by the time I got things, the raw file, the raw inputs adequately recorded, that might have been an hour or so. But then going back inside and editing everything and making sure things line up perfectly, that could be 5 or 6 hours work, because one of the other thing is, when you record something over and over, you introduce latency. It takes roughly 143 milliseconds for there's a roughly 143 milliseconds difference between the sound coming out and into my ears, and then the playing of it to synchronize. So even if I am playing perfectly synced with the audio that's coming into my headphones, there's still going to be, as far as the computer is concerned, around 140 odd milliseconds difference between when it's sent the sound and it receives the new sound. And that's latency through cables and the mixing board and things like that. So there's things like that that introduce latency, and so that's why there's so much work to try and line everything up afterwards. Right, what time is it where I am? It is 5:16 p.m. You can probably see my timestamps on the which way am I pointing? This way, on the chat thing that comes up. Is it possible to adjust the volume? Yes, you use the amplify command, so you can either amplify things up or amplify things by a negative amount, and that will obviously reduce the volume. Sometimes I like to record full band multi-tracks. Do you have any advice to make the editing recording process faster, or is it just busy work that takes a long time? If you are a good musician and you have professional grade tools where everything is dialed in 100%, then theoretically it's going to make it a whole lot easier and a whole lot quicker to do the multi-track editing side of things. Because I've just got Audacity, which is a free tool, and because I am not a particularly consistent musician and I'm switching between instruments and all the rest of that, I find that there is a lot of post-production work that I need to do to make things sound all right. Sometimes I take advantage of the fact like for instance, I recorded Carol of the Bells, and I knew that I'd probably have to do a lot of work in post for that, and so I didn't bother recording it particularly well. But if I just open it, the raw format of it, it's going to take me forever to get this up to a playing standard, because there are some sections that are awfully out of tune. There's some bits where I just stop playing, and so I'll play this for you, what I've done so far with Carol of the Bells. Let me just flick the scene over. All right, so this is the bit for Carol of the Bells, and let's mute the click track and start this. Now let's turn the volume up on the board here. And so you can hear quite clearly that there's a lot of really bad tuning. There is issues with syncing up. There are parts where I just didn't play notes that were written. And there's all sorts of things there that just make that a really rough thing to start with. I could probably spend 8 or 9 hours and put that, even though it's only just over a minute long, could probably try and put that into something where I could present it, but because, in my opinion, the raw thing is just too average to really record, then I might, or to present or spend the effort on, I'm not actually going to bother. The other thing is that when I do create multi-track recordings, the number of views that they get is generally pretty low. It's a whole lot of effort to produce a multi-track video consistent with the amount of views and consequently the revenue that it gets. So that's something that I have to keep in mind. I enjoy doing the multi-tracks, but if I'm going to do it for the point of trying to create revenue and stuff on YouTube, then it's almost pointless because I get next to nothing for it. Terry Whittington, not trying to get personal, Trent, but what do I do for work? I am a telecommunications consultant, my job title is a solutions architect. But I'm starting a new role early next year. I was going to get made redundant in my job, so they said I had until the end of February before they were going to make me redundant. So I went out to the market and found something else. So I started a new job in the new year, actually at the end of January. So it was nice to be able to resign before I got made redundant. But so there's been a whole lot of stress about that. But yeah, that's what I do for a job. And so we'll see what happens after that. Have I upgraded my microphone or just improved? In past videos, you didn't sound as amazing as you do now. Well, thank you for thinking that I sound amazing. I'll disagree with that somewhat. But yes, I've spent a lot of money upgrading the audio recording stuff. I have this mix pad thing here. This has got reverb built into it. I'll just turn. Still using a crappy webcam for it. So this is the mix board that I use. I've got my lapel mic here. I've got my second channel which goes to a Shure mic that I use for the instrument recording. I've currently got some extra stuff because I've got my PC running through this. It's got the the effects unit built in here, so I can sort of modify the effects. And so that's something that I never had before. I used to have just a crappy USB mic that I'd do all the recording on. It sounded adequate, but it wasn't great. After I started using the USB microphone, I would then go and add reverb manually through Audacity, which sounded better but not great. And so I've now got this mix pad. The microphone that I've got here is I actually bought this microphone secondhand. It is a Shure PGA58, it says. It is not actually the microphone that I wanted to use. I just bought that because the microphone that I did use so when I went and bought some new stuff, I bought this, which is a Shure SM57, but I found with some instruments this microphone, which is supposed to be better than the other microphone, is it gives me some weird effects and some weird sounds when I record with it, and I'm not actually convinced that it operates quite right. I think it might be faulty, but I need to do some more work on investigating that one day. So yeah, new microphones, new mixing board, and all of that is down to the people that support this channel on Patreon, because I use those Patreon funds to get that stuff, as well as trying to upgrade lighting in here. I've got a big LED panel that sits up here. Unfortunately, it flickers when I record it with my 60 frames per second. With my 60 frames per second camera, it gives me flickering on the with this new LED light, so that's annoying. So I think everything I do is all hodgepodge together. I've got a tiny little corner of my garage, and I've got things that don't work. I've got everything that's broken, so I do the best with what I've got, but the audio stuff is probably one of the few things that I've got that is actually nice and works reasonably well. But even though I bought that Shure microphone new, I think I need to get it sent back. Right, any other questions? I have a 3D printer and I printed mouthpieces for large instruments and they worked fine, but the smaller they got, the worse they got. Did you get similar results? Yeah, you need to experiment with mouthpieces. I find that if you use a coarse resolution, so you print it faster, then you tend to get holes and gaps in the sound suffers as a result. But if you print things with very fine resolution, it tends to make it a little bit better. That's what I found anyway. Right. I start teaching in January and was interested in you. What is the program you use? I play the low brass instruments and enjoy watching you. What program I use for what? I use a variety of programs. I use Audacity for the audio side of things. I use Adobe Premiere for the video editing side of things. I use YouTube for publishing my videos. Yeah. Right, there's some people that are going to bed because it's late your time, so that's all good. So look, I've been here for nearly an hour, I guess. What I'll do is sign off. There's a few people watching, but generally questions and answers only interest certain people. So I just want to finish by wishing you all a very, very Merry Christmas. I hope you have a fantastic period with your families. Yeah, so if you've got any further questions, feel free to send me an email. If you want to support me on Patreon, then you absolutely can. The link will be down in the video description below. Yeah, so thank you very much for watching. Have a fantastic Christmas and happy holidays and all the rest of that. And I'll see you all some other time.